I'm Joe Helko, your host, and welcome to another episode of NCSS Here for You. Since 1958, Northwestern Counseling and Support Services has been providing access to high-quality services which promote healthy living and emotional well-being to the residents of Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Over the years, as the needs of the community have changed, so too have the programs and services that we make available to assist children, adolescents, adults, families, and seniors. We take our role in the community seriously and strive to provide a continuum of the highest quality services to meet the needs of individuals who at any point seek assistance. This month's episode is titled, Hope Happens Here. When reviewing data from the 2021 Vermont Youth Risk Behavior Survey, 17,000 Vermont high schoolers were asked if they experienced poor mental health most of the time or always in the last 30 days. Results include 49% of females, 21% of males, and 59% of LGBTQ plus students agreeing with the statement. In addition, a greater number of Vermont adolescents die by suicide than the national average. At BFA-St. Albans, there's a student-led movement, Hope Happens Here, with the goal of having an impact on the BFA community by promoting mental health awareness and providing resources and support to their classmates and teammates with their mental well-being. They want to start the conversation and let everyone know that it's okay not to be okay. To discuss the Hope Happens Here movement at BFA-St. Albans, I'm pleased to introduce this month's guests. They're Norah Gates, who's a junior at BFA-St. Albans, and Eleanor Demore, who is also a junior at BFA-St. Albans. I'd like to welcome both of you to the show this month.
Thank you.
So let us start with what prompted students to begin this movement within BFA-St. Albans High School.
Yeah, so in 2019, a BFA student who was a part of athletic council and many sports teams committed suicide. So this student, it wasn't aware to other teammates and staff members and community members that this student was struggling with mental health issues. So it was a huge shock to BFA as a whole and to the St. Albans community. So basically students saw there was this student who was struggling and nobody knew, nobody was able to help him. So they decided that they needed to do something to prevent it from happening again. So Athletic Council kind of took it and ran with it, working to improve or give students resources to mental health. So then we created Hope Happens Here from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So totally understanding that this was an event which totally shook up to the foundations of school because it's someone, and that's the thing, especially when you talk about something like suicide, is what typically happens after a person has died by suicide is those who are left are always questioning, how could this happen? It isn't as if they signal from the highest mountaintop, I'm struggling with something, usually. To your credit to bring this initiative into school. So, speaking of stigma, stigma's always been a major barrier for people who are struggling with mental health to seek help for conditions such as anxiety and depression. And how does the Hope Happens Here movement address students that are struggling with a mental health challenge?
So Hope Happens Here, we spread a lot of awareness throughout the school. Things can be seen around the school. People, when you bring up Hope Happens Here, they're like, oh yeah, that helps with mental health. And and so we basically just want to show people that it is okay to not be okay. Like it's not something that needs to have a stigma around it. Like it's not so many people struggle with this. So Hope Happens Here basically just provides awareness, and we've been working on some stuff that will hopefully help bring people, it'll hopefully help give people more of, I don't know the word I'm looking for, help, I guess. It'll help people get help.
Well, and normalize the fact that they're not the only ones who are struggling. Yeah. That's, I guess, would be another thing that this will help to do for students. Mm-hmm. Now, when we talk about hope Happens Here, what resources are you able to share to assist students?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different resources, not only for student athletes, but also just for students as a whole, because it's definitely something needed in our community. So one thing we do is awareness games. So whether it be a basketball game or a hockey game, we'll have some sort of speaker at the beginning of the game before or after the national anthem is played, and they have a little script they read talking about how it's okay not to be okay. Along with at those games, we'll do 50-50 raffles, and if it's a basketball game, we might do like a free throw competition, or a hockey game, we'll do chuck a puck.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we'll do a t-shirt toss or something fun, just to kind of bring some awareness to athletes specifically. And then we also look at not just athletes, what else does our community need? So we do Hope Happens Here shirt days, where all members of Hope Happens Here will wear these shirts throughout the day. And then we'll have at lunch a display table. So students will have a table set up with resources, and then we have stickers, wristband, t-shirts for students to come chat about mental health with other students, and then get some swagger merch to kind of reflect the impacts of mental health and how it's important to make sure we're talking about that. Mm-hmm. And then we also we have a Hope Happens Here Instagram page, where students in Hope Happens Here or outside of Hope Happens Here will send in posts, videos, talking about mental health, motivational quotes, that kind of stuff. And then a couple years ago, students went around and put "You Are Important" stickers on all the lockers in BFA that had the suicide hotlines number on there and other resources as well.
Yeah.
And then we also do bathroom bulletins monthly, or just not even just in the bathrooms, but around the school, mm-hmm. that provide resources. They might talk about like OCD Awareness Week. We might have a specific bulletin up for that week, and we'll have resources and information just to kind of get students to understand like the importance of mental health and destigmatizing that.
That's terrific. And, that leads us into mental health is just as important as your physical health. As I like to say, there are people who would talk about being a diabetic or having maybe a knee problem or a heart problem all day long. But the moment you start talking about anything that's brain-based, whether it's depression, anxiety, bipolar, people will typically tend to clam up. So I think it's important with what you're doing that, the mental health is just as important as physical health. And as you have both alluded to, the student athletes, many of them feel it's a sign of weakness to speak about struggling with a mental health condition. But how has Hope Happens Here changed the mindset at BFA?
Yeah, so definitely we can both speak on this because we're also athletes, and it's just very easy. Being on a team, you understand. I have a lot of friends, and including myself, who have had days where either I feel down, or I just am really upset, or even if I just have anxiety and depression, and I just don't feel my best. Hope Happens Here, we all have a lot of amazing coaches, and Hope Happens Here as a whole, definitely, like Ellie was talking about, she said that Hope Happens Here, we put bulletins in the bathroom and stuff like that, and that also sometimes we'll put up stuff about how it's okay to not be okay as a student athlete, because you have school all day and then you have practice after school, and that just can be a lot for a lot of people. And that's perfectly normal. Our brains aren't fully developed, right? So it's completely okay. And like she said, that's basically our main point is we just want student athletes to understand that so many people go through this, and you're not alone going through this. So we are trying to get that initiative out, that's what's going on. But
yeah, and I think another thing to add to that, I'm also very lucky to have some really amazing coaches that really do care about my mental health as an athlete, and not just, do your sport, do good, be good. And so a statistic that was brought up to us is that 33% of college students struggle with mental health. Of that, 30% reach out for some sort of support or help, but of college athletes, only 10% do. So that was kind of, I guess you could say the same thing about high school athletes. It's a lot less that are reaching out for support and for help and talking about struggles they're facing. So I think just bringing awareness to, yeah, you're an athlete, but you're also still a human. Like, you still need to take care of your mental health. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health and should be treated the same way.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. And it's like, people think like, oh, like if someone gets in a car accident and gets really physically hurt, like, and could lead to death, so can mental health. If your mental health gets bad enough, it could lead to things such as suicide. Like, and nobody wants that, you know? So, I just like, we also really want to emphasize that it's like, even a physical injury is the same as mental health. So that's what we're also really trying to push forward and have people understand, that even though like maybe you can't see the injury, maybe you don't understand the injury, like, it's still, mental health is still essentially like, if you're struggling with depression, that's still like an injury, like, you know, but to your body, like to how you feel, like, so we just want people to understand that.
You know, what's interesting as well as you talk about being athletes and that is that one of the things I think a lot of people don't really consider too often is when you're an athlete and there's all the physical elements and attributes of whatever the sport is that you're participating in. But along with that, there's a lot of mental that goes into playing a sport as well. And I think that gets overlooked.
Yeah.
So, you know, that, and I think therein lies the fact that it's even more important that somebody who's an athlete reach out if they're struggling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me just ask, the Hope Happens Here student group, does the group meet regularly, or how does that function as far as throughout the school year?
Yeah, so we typically meet monthly. Sometimes we'll meet once or twice a month if we have a busy month going on. And so we'll meet as a whole group, all students that are in Hope Happens Here. And during those meetings, we'll break up into smaller groups and work on certain things. Like maybe some students want to organize a t-shirt day with a display table. Some want to organize an awareness game. Some want to work on Instagram posts. So we'll break up into small groups after talking as a whole group about what we've been doing in the past month or since the last time we've met. And then we'll have our meeting. We'll leave from there. Depending on like what you started working on, you'll meet again as smaller groups throughout the month to get that event to happen. So that kind of is really beneficial for us because it allows students, one, to prioritize their mental health by not being involved in every single thing that Hope Happens Here is doing, because it is a lot. Mm-hmm. And it also allows for students to take a more like in-depth dive on things they're passionate and interested about within Hope Happens Here. So it's been kind of good to get to try new things, but also not be too overwhelmed with your schoolwork, your sports, all your other clubs and commitments.
Yeah. No, that's terrific. And speaking of sports and that, before we move on to the next question, is the sports that you're involved in, which sports are you participating in this year at school?
So I play soccer, and so I'm actually injured right now. So I was going to play basketball, but I might manage for basketball, but I don't think I will be able to play this year. But those are the two. And I might do track in the spring, but not sure yet. So
you mentioning that, Norah, it brings up that you're injured and won't be able to participate in another sport that you'd like to.
Yeah.
Brings me to when we talk about the combination of physical and mental, because some student athletes who aren't going to be able to participate in basketball might get depressed by that, as opposed to taking that information and redirecting in some fashion so that you make the best of the situation. But that's a great example of how people can go in various directions in those circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot like what if say someone has depression, like if you want to get better, there's a lot of ways you can get better, but definitely sports are a big thing. Like if you have depression in high school, exercise is such a huge thing. And so exercise just like helps you. It definitely helps me. Like if I have a bad day and I would go to soccer and I would just play with my friends and like have just a good practice, it would make me feel better. So sports are definitely a big thing. Even if you don't play sports, exercising is still really good. So definitely for sports, when you're injured, it really is just, it takes away a lot. but at least you're still a part of the team, being around people who you know, like, you can count on and are so amazing, and especially coaches too.
Yeah. And Eleanor?
Yeah. So I'm not involved in any sports at BFA, but outside of BFA, I'm on a swim team in Burlington that I do throughout the winter. And then in the summer, I'm on another swim team.
Yeah. So you're a big swimmer.
Yes.
You like the water.
Like the water, yeah. But it's definitely good having coaches that are super supportive. And we constantly are talking about our mental health. Almost every single practice, we check in with our coach and talk about how we're doing. And I think that's something new that we've started since I was younger on the team. And it's definitely made a huge impact on our team and our teammates as a whole. Just how we're doing, not only in the water, but outside of the water, and the connections that we've been able to make.
And I think, to the credit of coaches of all sports today, I mean, that is something, once again, that years ago, they were never considering, dealing with, any of that. And to their credit today, I know many, many coaches do an outstanding job of trying to stay connected in this arena, realizing, once again, that the mental health aspects of their athletes are just as important as the physical attributes as well. So now, since the introduction of Hope Happens Here, have you noticed positive outcomes within the BFA community?
So Hope Happens Here started in 2019, and we weren't students yet, but as we've been in Hope Happens Here these past 3 years, I think we can both say that we've noticed a lot of progression, like especially with the more awareness games. And because I remember my freshman year, I remember seeing posters and whatnot, but I don't remember a lot of awareness games. I don't remember a lot of stuff. Maybe that was just me. I don't remember, but I definitely have seen a lot of progression within our Hope Happens Here group and just throughout the school. So, yeah.
Yeah. So Hope Happens Here, I actually found out about it through a display table I saw outside of the cafeteria. One of my friends was sitting at it, and I was like, oh, what are you doing here? Like, this isn't your lunchtime. Why are you here? And she really gave me a good in-depth look about Hope Happens Here and what it does. And I think throughout the 3 years, we've been able to make it so we don't have so many freshmen that are like, what is this? What are you guys doing out here? This isn't your lunch. Like, get to class. We're able to see, like, oh, Hope Happens Here. Yeah, I saw that bulletin in the bathroom. Oh, yeah, I went to that hockey game where they talked. We're selling raffle tickets, which I think has been really positive for our community. It's kind of gotten bigger and more well-known within BFA in the past couple of years. And I think with COVID, it probably plateaued a little bit, but I think we were able to pick it up really quickly, which has been really good.
Yeah. And you definitely hear mental health talked about more. Like I have some friends who are kind of on the shy side, but they definitely have opened up to me through sports. Like, I just get to know them and they've opened up to me. And I think it's also been easier because since there is a stigma around mental health, we're trying to change that. And since we're trying to change that, they're like, oh, I'm comfortable talking about this. This is a safe space. I can talk about how I'm feeling. So.
You know, and it is so important that one-on-one that people begin to just open up and talk to their friends. You know, typically it's those that are closest to you in your universe that perhaps you're a little more comfortable. Maybe at first it's stigmatizing, but we'll be a little more comfortable in talking about maybe it's depression or anxiety. And hopefully that individual, like with this type of movement, would be able to say, well, you know, there's all these various resources, and, you know, it's whatever is the best resource for you that can make a difference. You know, I know some of the resources that you have are like the one in there that I believe I saw is what is now 988, which used to be the suicide lifeline.
Yes.
It's now 988, the 3 digits as opposed to 10-digit number that people have to dial. And one of the beauties of that particular way for somebody to get engaged in discussing that they're just not feeling well is they can do it, you know, either via phone, chat, or text. So whatever is most comfortable for someone is a way to kind of get them involved in getting and seeking perhaps the type of treatment that will help them. But
yeah, that's another really good thing that I like that you brought up. I feel like it's really hard to pick up the phone and call someone that you don't know and say, I'm struggling, I need help. And I think it's really awesome that we get to see, oh, you can text them, you don't have to call.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a very scary thing, knowing I have to make a call to this person. But I think it's really awesome that we're able to text.
And it is. And again, I think what that shows is that when you're looking generationally, like, somebody my age, as an example, feels that the person on the other end of the line is a qualified therapist, so to speak, and is probably a lot more comfortable making the call. Not to say they can't text or chat, they certainly can. But I know one of the things that was found after that number was being launched is the fact that the younger you get, the more options you need to have away from the phone. Because to your point, Eleanor, of picking up the phone and talking to somebody who doesn't know you, but yet to be able to, text or chat is a way to get engaged without that kind of that roadblock, that would have still been there if the only way to go was to make the call.
Yeah.
From that standpoint.
Yes.
So are there, this is kind of a outside of the box question, but are there additional resources that you wish were available to address mental health needs throughout the BFA community?
Yeah, so definitely. Our last meeting that we had, I brought up a point that I think is very, very important, which is school start times. I definitely think, yes, everybody's tired in the morning, but it's different when it comes to high school students getting up that early to go to school for 8 hours a day and then have practice or something afterwards, or even just going home. We talked about that in our meeting, and we said that we want to speak with student government to try and help push back the start time. And I know there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, but we're starting to talk about that because that's a very big part of mental health. Teenagers need 9 to 11 hours of sleep a night. And a lot of us, studies show that we don't go to bed until later, 10:30, 11. That is just when our bodies are okay, we need sleep. And so waking up, I wake up at 7 every morning because I need to get to school and find a parking spot. And then I'm there, and then school starts at 8:10, which is for some people super early. And if you don't go to bed until maybe even 12 a.m., because that's just how people are sometimes, that's not enough sleep for them to focus in a school day and then go to sports or clubs or whatever afterwards. So we're starting to bring up that topic and see if we can start to make a change with that. But yeah.
Yeah, there are two things that I would really like to see Hope Happens Here be able to accomplish by the time I graduate next year. So one thing is, last year we had Hope Happens Here came together. We had an early dismissal one day, and students from Hope Happens Here stayed. And we had a presentation from one of our school social workers it was specifically about eating disorders and about high school students and how they struggle, and resources that are there and resources that we want to be able to provide information about that and stuff. And leaving that meeting, it felt like it was really impactful for all of us to hear about it, hear how many people were struggling, and the things we can do to help people that are struggling. And I think that feeling is something that I want all BFA students to be able to feel at some point. I want to have some sort of outside speaker or social worker come in and have students be able to go and listen to this presentation about those kinds of topics. And we were very lucky. We got to pick what we were going to hear about that day. We had a meeting a couple months prior and talked about some issues we saw in our community and wanted to hear and get more information about. So I think that would be really good to see for BFA students as a whole. Along with one thing that would be so amazing for students is mental health days. Knowing, okay, I'm having a really, really rough time. I need to take a day off from school to de-stress a little bit, to focus on myself. And you know what? When I go back tomorrow, the work I missed yes, I'll make it up eventually, but it can't be like, you need it in now. Like, oftentimes if we're sick and we take a day off from school, we're still stuck at home doing our work that we're missing because it's too much to fall behind.
Yes.
But I think working with teachers and administration to make some policies around, oh, they took a mental health day, they need it, let's give them a little more grace in making up this work.
Yep. And I definitely, like, adding on to that, like, there's some teachers who are amazing at, like, if I take a mental health day off and because I just need it, and I come back, they're like, okay, like, this can be due in a week or so, like, you can make this up. Like, but they're very understanding about it. And then there's other teachers who just, like she said, they need it in now. And so I just think also talking about that, like, we need people to understand that sometimes it just gets so stressful. Like, everybody has those times where it's so stressful and you just feel like you're going to explode, essentially. So people need those days off. And if you need to take a day off, then that is completely fine. And that's, like, also, I just wanted to add on, like, with the start times, like, I see a lot of people coming in late every morning. Like, there are so many people that come in late because they are exhausted that morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so adding on to what she said, like, mental health days that they take off could also help that. So this whole thing is just wanting to have people understand that, like, it is okay to struggle. It's okay to feel stressed out. Everybody feels that way. And by having people understand that it's okay to do that, maybe we can move forward and make some changes in our school. So
those are some great ideas. And again, I realize because of the nature of things that it takes time to get these through the various committees and, the various systems. But, it's like with anything. And one thing that is constant is change. And certainly to make change takes time. And, you just have to be forthright in what the rationale is and why, and people get on board. And so those are some really interesting initiatives that you have in mind. And I wish you the best as you pursue them in getting some of this change. So I can't believe it, but our time is up. And I don't know about you, if you thought this was going to seem like it took forever to get through this half hour or not, but this has really been terrific. And I want to thank my guests, Norah Gates and Eleanor Demore, for sharing their insights on the Hope Happens Here student-led movement at BFA-St. Albans and the impact that program has had on mental health of students and student athletes. I also want to thank you, the viewer, for spending time with us again this month. You can learn more about NCSS and all of their programs and services by logging on to ncssinc.org. I'm Joe Halco, and I'll be back next month with another episode of NCSS Here for You.